Hi, this is Asim.
This is Sujoy.
This is Amrita.
And you're listening to Khandan, a Bollywood podcast about the three main Khans of the Hindi film industry:
Amir,
Salman,
And Shah Rukh.
Hi, you're listening to Khandan, a Bollywood podcast regular feed. Thank you so much for your support over the years. We now have a Patreon channel with bonus content and exclusive merch for those of you who would like to support us. Every dollar goes towards creating more and better content. Visit us at patreon.com/Khandan podcast.
Hi and welcome to a new episode of Khandan Podcast. My name is Asim Bernie and I'm joined with my lovely host Amrita and Sujoy. Hey Amrita, hey Sujoy.
Hey everybody.
Hello.
We are joined with Saleha Salam, our friend Sal from Sal and the Backpunt from Twitter. It has been so long, and I also realized, Sal, the last few visits that you've done to Khandan was when I was not around. So for me, this feels like, you know. And the other thing I was also thinking, whenever we talk about Aishwarya and SLB, we immediately go to you. Like this connection is now in my mind. So I'm so happy to have you back on.
I'm so happy to be back. I feel like anytime I've been on without you there, Asim, like you've been gone but not forgotten.
No, I've been forgotten very quickly. I know that. People can't wait to forget me. I think that's what happens.
You have abounded, Asim. So, and I will tell you, even when I've gone on like other podcasts, the references to you have abounded. You're such a luminary in the firmament. So, never ever forgotten.
Yeah, Sal just called me old.
Given how long all of us have been talking, I think that ages us, that dates us immediately. Because I think it's getting into that double-digit space. So I think all of us are old.
By the way, like last week we recorded an episode, me and Sujoy, and I was wearing a grey hoodie, and my wife said, "Do not wear that hoodie. It picks up the grey in your bere, and you look like a Buddha." And shave, and that's why this happened. Tension में shaving हो रही.
Well, I mean, at this point, your show is about three sexagenarians, right? Or almost.
That was the original pitch. Good. We are talking, like I kind of introed, we are talking about Devdas today. I think, I don't know when, again, like I'm very confused about the timeline. It's going to be episode 300 of Khandan. So either this probably comes before that. So I think this is like, I think this is a good movie. Like Khandan 300 episodes, we're talking about the big hitters that we hadn't talked about. Devdas. Amrita, do you want to give us an intro what Devdas is and what it is about?
Even before I want to talk about Devdas, I just want to say that actually, yeah, okay. Devdas is basically one of the great stories of Indian cinema, right? And it's based on a Bengali book, but it is, I would say, an integral part of Indian cinema at this point because it's been remade in pretty much every film industry in India. And it was made in Hindi. And it's been remade several times in Hindi with some of the greatest actors in Indian cinema. And this particular one that we are going to be talking about, the Khandan version, is by, of course, Shah Rukh Khan. And it's directed by Sanjay Leela Bhansali. And of course, the two great actors that this movie is forever associated with is actually Aishwarya Rai and Madhuri Dixit. But for Khandan in particular, this is a very special moment because we have Sal on this show. Because for those of you who weren't part of the discourse on Twitter back when it was Twitter and, a fun place to be and sort of like a global
A place where we made
Choraha.
friends. Where we made
Yes.
friends.
Instead of calling for war and destruction. When Twitter was fun and we would all, like, just talk about cinema and things like that. There was only, and everyone loved to pile on Devdas. Everyone was just like, this was terrible. All the Bengalis hated this film because they were just like, what is this? This is not how we feel emotions in Calcutta. And all the, like all the other like cinephiles, all the cine bros were just like, ugh, what is this? Like, this is not how we do cinema. And in this in this atmosphere of hate, there was just one tall shining pillar of grace who loved this film and defended it with all her might, and that is Sal. And the moment that we've been talking about this episode for a while, like we've been like, oh yeah, we should do Devdas, we should do Devdas. And every single time I was like, there's no way we're discussing this movie without Sal, because Sal is the one person that I want to hear from about Devdas. Like, I don't care about anyone else's opinion. So, welcome, Sal. I'm so glad that you're here.
And cut to Sal now. If she now goes like dunk on Devdas now, it's the most terrible movie.
Sal is like, I rewatched it and it's actually not that good.
I hate to do it, guys. Actually, it's really funny. This is within the last, I think, like the last couple of months. This is the second time I'm gonna like have gone into something and talked about Devdas, because I went into my friend Meher's class at RISD and spoke to her class about Devdas.
Oh
So
wow.
I feel like Devdas is sort of like irrevocably associated with me at this point, and I'll take it. I'm happy that it's part of my. I'm happy to be here.
I have to say though, Sal, like I have a very instinctual reaction to this film, and then every time I have that, solely because I know you and because I've listened to you talk about it, it always makes me pause and rethink and reevaluate and sort of like try and like sort of parse the feelings that I feel as well as the visuals that I see, in a way that I wouldn't have if I didn't know you. So I like, are I'm sure we'll have like many disagreements as this episode progresses, but I do want to thank you for that, because it's been like an invaluable voice in my head just to like think about you.
I want to also just add, because I think nobody has explained Aishwarya Rai as well as Sal has to me, and it's changed my brain chemistry towards how I see to her. And I'm hoping you do this for me for Devdas too, because just to kind of kick off the movie, I think this was in an era where I wasn't really connected with Bollywood too much. Like it was, you have ups and downs, and I think I was just getting on with life and like setting a career. And but I have such vivid memories of this releasing, and I think I was in France, or I was at that time in Paris. I was living in Paris, so the seeing a DVD of a Bollywood movie, a poster of a Bollywood movie everywhere was so weird to me. And this idea of this reception of Cannes and it being such a big thing, and then the disconnect I had where I actually don't like the movie. Like I remember not liking the movie, and I think at that time there was also just a bit of, I was very much in that whole Salman versus Shah Rukh thing, if I'm not mistaken. That was around that too. And obviously I was team Salman because he was making classics like Tumko Na Bhool Payenge. So how could I then connect with something like Devdas, right? But I think rewatching it now, it just showed me how much of the conversation that we're now having about terms that didn't exist then, about incel culture or toxic masculinity, all of those terms didn't really exist, hadn't been codified back in 2002. So we were trying to have a conversation about the themes of this movie, but I don't think we had the language for it that we do maybe now, to a certain degree, especially with all of the movies that are coming out now, be it from, Durandar, Animal, Kabir Singh, everything else that, like, there's so many. And I don't know if that, I mean, if that's a good kickoff point. Do you feel Sal, that this is there's a link there between that portrayal of masculinity and what we're seeing now in terms of portrayals of masculinity.
I mean, I think the portrayals of masculinity we have now I loop back to how we were doing masculinity in the late 80s and especially sort of the early to mid 90s, because there's this idea that's especially sort of being pushed by like the trades and like, mass filmmakers and so on, that this is what people want to watch because the people who buy tickets to the movies are the young men. So give them the kinds of movies and the kinds of characters that they want to watch, right? And what they want to watch is an animal. What they want to watch is things that are not woke. They actually want to watch a man hit his girlfriend or wife or whatever. Come on, because come on, look at the Telugu movies that do so well, right? So as soon as those, I think especially the Telugu films started having those big pan India successes, I think the Indian, like I think producers, especially the old school ones and the exhibitors were like, let's start hitting our heroines again. It was very that. And I think with Devdas, what was happening was that it took some of that and put it in an elevated, sort of that late 90s, early 2000s, um, NRI, big budget, posh framing. So it was sort of a meeting of like two SRKs in that way. It was like early to mid 90s, like toxic SRK. And then you had, big budget SRK and like NRI fantasy SRK, right? Like the SRK who, when he does a movie, the the copies of all the outfits flood the market or whatever,
Hmm.
right? Like the songs are going to play at all the weddings and so on. And then, but it's also the SRK who's the dar and Anjam, like the kind of down and dirty SRK. So I feel like it's a fusion of both those things. So I think that's why you can sort of draw a line from Devdas to now, because Devdas pulls from the archetypes that the cinema now is so consciously pulling from in terms of masculinity.
But it's just also interesting because rewatching it now, when we're talking about these portrayals, it's a lot of it is you would not think that these people would be making this kind of movie in a way, or they have so much passion for this story, right? Like clearly, neither Sanjay Leela Bhansali, neither Aishwarya, neither Shah Rukh would be. It's not the toxicity of the character that would probably appeal to them. You would think, but it is something that it feels like you can see the effort and the love and the blood sweat and tears from the first shot to the end shot of this movie, right? That you would maybe now see in something like a weirdly like a Vanga, Sandeep Reddy Vanga kind of movie, but the framing is so different. I don't know, Amrita, if I'm making sense at all, or is this kind of what are your thoughts about that?
No, I think that's definitely something that I've always thought about Devdas actually, that there's an emotional core to this film that a lot of people have mocked over the years because they just find it so outlandishly loud, right?
Hmm.
But I feel like that melodrama is it goes back to something that is very deep rooted in Hindi cinema. It comes from the Gujarati theater that gave rise to Bollywood cinema, right? And every time I see this film, I can see that. Maybe it's also a fact that, Sanjay Leela Bhansali likes to cast his supporting cast from the Gujarati cinema and the Gujarati theater and the Marathi theater. So you see them having that background and then bringing it to the screen. But it definitely leans into something that formed the genesis of Hindi cinema as we know it today. And I think that's a very deliberate choice. And a lot of people that dislike this movie talk about it as if it's something that they weren't aware that they were doing, right? They just seem to think, well, it's just bad filmmaking, or like they didn't know that they were doing this. And I feel like it was a very deliberate thing.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
I feel like it was very much designed to be in like this sort of like heightened emotional state of the characters that has now become like a physical representation of their internal emotional states, right? And I think like that was entirely by design, and Sanjay Leela Bhansali meant every single frame of it.
Yeah, it's in a way designed and choreographed from the like frame by frame, right? The moment you enter this world, it's very artificial. And that's the whole point because it's staged like a play to me, but on such a magnum opus scale that nobody else would have thought of it. It's very poetic, it's very foreshadowing, it's very much in chapters. It's like just telling the story of Devdas in chapters of, them falling in love, then the separation of power. All of it is very, very heightened. So and from the first scene itself, that whole wonder of them introducing the Haveli and the many family members getting the news of Devdas coming, you can see how heightened everything is. It's very much a theater play. And for people who don't buy into it, they will never buy into the world of Devdas. And for people
Mm.
who adjust to that rhythm, instantly you know the pitch where it is playing. This will be so, so much rewarding.
But rewatching it for me also shows me the evolution of Sanjay Leela Bhansali as a filmmaker, right?
Hmm.
Because immediately I had trouble taking on the pitch that it was so loud, it was
Hmm.
so dramatic, and everybody's just the whole family is running towards each other and like one after the other, and it made me think that this is has more to do with, let's say, hum dil de chuke sanam, and that family dynamic and that kind of setting than it does with Gangubai now, or Hira Mandi, for example. Although you could say that Hira Mandi and Gangubai is also dealing with certain themes that are present in Devdas too. But the pitch of the filmmaking, the loudness of it, does have more of that theater background that Amrita you were mentioning, and it does take a while to kind of get used to. And I think what you're saying, Sujoy, is also very important because again, those are the things that I sometimes struggle with this movie. Is like because it's such in chapters and like locations, and he's so focused on the set design, sometimes I feel like, when are we, like,
Hmm.
how long has
Yeah.
Dave not seen Paru, or how long has he not seen Chandramukhi, how long has Chunni not seen him, like, and
Yeah.
especially at certain points I got really really confused at the, I mean, we're skipping a bit towards the end, but they had um they had that whole sing and dance where Chunni is dancing. What was the song?
Shisha se shisha
Shisha
mein.
se,
Chalak chalak.
yeah, Chalak Chalak.
Sure, sure.
And then immediately the next scene is that they're in the train, and Chunni says like, "Oh, we haven't seen each other for so long." And I was like, "Wait, how much time
Hmm.
has passed?" So a lot of times that thing I really struggle with. Um, so I don't know, like that. Those are the things that like I have trouble getting into this world of Devdas, and I have that less so with other Sanjay Leela Bhansali. Like I can get into Savaria, which also I feel has a very kind of staged
Hmm.
performance, and it's also very like, oh, which place are we in, when, how long has Salman's character been gone, when is he coming back, like all of these
He
things,
was
obviously
always
that.
yearning for Salman to show up.
Yeah, yeah, but
Maybe
yeah,
that's
I'm
why.
just thinking of timelines, right? Like,
Uh,
because obviously, if you're gonna sell me a movie on Salman, it's like, when is Salman coming? So, but I had less of that problem with Savaria because I just feel it is a fairy tale.
mhm.
But in Devdas, maybe it's because it's that in between movie that
The
I
geography of the landscape is not instantly set up because the zamindars are living in Talshunapur and Chandramukhi is in Kolkata. It's quite a bit of a distance, and you don't know how long it takes for Devdas to go back and forth. And you're like, how long has it been?
Yeah. And like even when again coming back to that train sequence, like I was like, where is this train going? Is this like, so like the ending of This Is Us, where it's all a metaphor, like they're all on the train and meeting. So those are the things that I kind of have trouble with. So I'm going to go to Sal to explain this to me. Like how do you read these kind of, let's say, is it should I read it as a kind of a metaphor, or like a kind of like a dream fantasy kind of storytelling? Like what is real and what is not real? Like I feel somewhere I get lost in the set design, in the meticulousness of these things, but then they play so fast and loose with location, character motivation, times lines, where, and this has always been my problem, where I always say Sanjay Leela Bhansali, oh, it looks perfect and it's amazing to look at, but the emotions aren't real. But I imagine for you that's not the case.
Yeah, so I watched this movie for the first time when I was a kid, and it was one of the first films I watched in the theater. And I remember being like, it was again, like, I think it altered my brain chemistry. I walked out of it
Mhm.
like with like a headache, but in the most like glorious way, where I was like, oh my God, what has just happened to me? So it was one of those films where it really reoriented for me what cinema could do and what it could look like and what it could make you feel. But even then, like, a lot of the questions that are coming up now were coming up then, in terms
Mm.
of the conversation, the cultural conversation about the movie. If you watch like Shobha Day's Coffee with Karan interview from back then, she talks about how she hates the movie because she thinks it's gaudy and tacky and loud. When the film came out, like, a lot of people were called it soulless. They said it was too loud. They said it was all about the set design. It didn't have the subtlety of Kamoshi. It was so, a lot of the things that people are, and even the gender politics, they came up a good deal when people were talking about the films. Then, maybe people didn't use the word incel, but they talked about, how there was, the gender politics were problematic and so on. Right? So I think a lot of that stuff was in the conversation about Devdas then, but not for me. Like, I think even then, those were not the things that bothered me. And even structurally, I don't remember thinking about like how hermetically sealed the world was, and how it wasn't concerned with yours or mine, like logistical concerns, like distance or time or so on. Because you're right, I think what you said is so, it's so correct. It is in this kind of in between place between reality and
Mhm.
this sort of dream, right? It's almost in this sort of fever dream nether world, right? Because it's in like it's set in India of like the British Raj, and it's sort of at the end of the 19th century, the beginning of the 20th century. But like, we're not really given too much sense of where, what time it is, what period it is, whatever. We're given some through the costuming and through some architectural detail, but otherwise, like, the socio-political context is not really elaborated upon.
Mhm.
um, you know, and even in terms of like, I think outside of that, even the very kind of specific to the narrative social grounding, the Bimal Roy version gets into it much more. It gives you a much more realistic grounding into what society looks like and why the marriage is impossible, etc., etc. And of course, it looks more real too. Like, it's like, this is what a zamidar's house looks like, and this is what a village looks like, and this is what a kota looks like, and none of that is
Yeah.
what it looks like in Devdas, right? It isn't going for realism in any way. Like like a Tawaif's kota would not have looked like that somewhere in Bengal, probably. Um, to the point that I think I remember when Umrao came out a few years later, people had been so, like, people's brains had been so broken by Devdas that they were like, oh, these sets look so poor. When they thought, oh, like, quotas do have to be like as big as Grand Central Station, you know?
Mm.
So I think I glommed onto the tone of the film, and the set design and the costuming and all of those things being part of the storytelling in a way that they weren't always for, I mean, cinema in general, but mainstream Bollywood cinema especially. Like, those films came out fairly rarely, and only were just, Lagan had just come out,
Mhm.
Aditya Chopra, Karan Johar, those kinds of mainstream directors were only just starting to make films. Vidhu Vinod Chopra was another director who probably made those like fully fleshed out worlds. And Sanjay Leela Bhansali, of course, came from his world. So this, like where an entire world was built from scratch for a mainstream Hindi film, this wasn't like common. And again, Bhansali was paying tribute and drawing from films that used to do that, and those films weren't being made anymore. He was consciously drawing from Pakistan, Umrao Jan, and so on. And those films had that quality as well because they were also set bound films,
Hmm.
and they weren't as much concerned with, I think, the way, I don't know, distance and time and those things as well. But I think that the difference, I think, for a lot of people who love Devdas less than those films, and I mean, it's not, I mean, since it draws from those films, it derives from those films, it's probably not as original as them. So I can see why they would. I think one of the things is Devdas is even more removed from any kind of actual, um, like socially integrated human experience. And so you have to buy that, right? You have to buy that this is purely at the intersect. This is like a psychosexual sort of fever, you
Yeah.
know? Like if you're okay with that, if you're like, I'm buying into this, this is about BDSM. And this is this is like this gothic, basically like horror movie. And I'm going to ignore that like time and space and these things don't work here because what I'm watching is like about how scary love is and that, is kinky for this director, then I'm going to enjoy this. That's how I see it.
Yeah, I'm way too square to have thought of BDSM. And like, that's okay. That's an interesting thing. The other thing that I also thought about, kind of going through, because I literally went back to watch one of the last videos Anupama Chopra and our friend Rahul Desai did, which they did this retake thing on Film Companion, and Devdas was one of the literally the last ones, and they were almost kind of sobbingly saying goodbye to Film Companion. So, and they absolutely loved this movie, and there was this moment where they're talking about how this created can for Indian cinema. They were kind of the first ones that literally like 2 days ago I was seeing on Twitter again that sequence where she's stepping out of the horse carriage and
In the
Shah Rukh
yellow
is
sari.
holding her. Yeah, and how it changed brain chemistry. But what was interesting is that when you go back and read the actual reviews of the reviewers and Cannes, they weren't positive at all. Like
They
most of
hated
the,
it.
yeah, the white critics that watched this felt Shah Rukh was too old. Like he the emotions were, it took too long. She was constantly running in things, and a lot of negativity. The only thing universally positive has been Madhuri. And maybe I am coming more from that Western lens, which for me the movie comes alive with Madhuri. It's only about Madhuri. Like the smile that I get, like grinning face to face, is just Madhuri, because I understand the character maybe a little bit more, but it's just in all of this artifice, in all of these measuring the three hairs on the forehead while drops of water drop. uh, Madhuri is the only one that makes it looks effortless. And that's just the skill set that, yes, Amrita.
Well, it's also I- my thesis is that Madhuri is not as annoying a character as Devdas and Paro. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like both because in the in at the core of the story, it's a story of like very young love, and it obviously comes at a register that as an adult when you're watching it you're just like, what is wrong with you people? We're like too cynical, too jaded, too grown to appreciate that level of like adolescent longing and earnestness um and ego as well. This is basically the story of like two people who could just have sat down and had like a real conversation and didn't, which is of course something that you see over and over again in literature. But Madhuri's character is a grown up. She's a working woman, in more ways than one, and she like she understands her place in this world in a way that Dev and Paro don't. And she acts accordingly. So when you are saying like, like she comes alive and like, the movie comes alive and when Madhuri comes on screen, yes, of course, like, she is Madhuri Dixit and she knows how to work a screenplay to her advantage. But also it helps, even if you're watching the Bimal Roy one, like Vaijayantimala's big breakthrough in Hindi cinema was that movie for good reason, because um, it's a very sympathetic role. So there's also that element to it.
Sujoy, man, where do you stand on Madhuri and Devdas? Or
I mean, I've grown to like all three characters, to be honest. I'm like, obviously, there is this whole conversation about Shah Rukh playing that role, and everybody was dunking on how his sort of mimicking Dilip Kumar in a way when he says the "Kaun kambak bardasht karne ke liye pita hai" is such a mimicry of what Dilip Kumar achieved with his acting, and but I have sort of grown to like his performance. Aishwarya as well, but out of the three of them, it's definitely Madhuri who takes the cake for me. Uh, just because she's Madhuri, man, and you can tell in all the dance performances, which I adore in this movie, and how they are staged. Chandramukhi is the one. They like SLB was very kind and generous enough to give Dola Re to stage them together, which is again another bone of contention for all the bongs who were like, this is not loyal to the text or whatever. And but I really enjoyed it. I really, really like them three. But the one character who every single time he appeared was grating was Chunni Babu to me, which is Jackie Shroff. And the way he's written, it's very much like, like a Sanjay Chel, or how, what's his face? Chakoji from Dord, what's his name?
yes, blanking on the name now too.
Wait, Neeraj Vora.
Neeraj Vora, yeah.
Yeah, how Neeraj Vora would write Chunni Babu. It's very much that. Cha se and all that, da se dunya and da se din. Oh my God, it was very much a David Dhawan version of Chunni Babu, and I really, really, really he despised that.
I think one of the problems I had with Chunni Babu is just apparently this was supposed to be Govinda. Like they initially went to Govinda for this, right?
Wow.
Which I think he could have pulled this off, like if it was Govinda. But I think the problem is that there's nothing else. Like it's that joke that goes on for too long, but there's definitely threads here where he longingly looks at Madhuri's character. He when he's speaking with Dev, he says like "Hamari mohabbat Chandramukhi," and like he even in Shisha, there's a moment where he's touching her feet. They're dancing, and then she runs away to Dev, and then Jackie's kind of looking at her running away, and there's like a glimpse of sadness. But I think that's just so lower level that you have to kind of pick out those threads because they're never obviously made in the movie, where it's a movie that says everything very obviously. And I think maybe that kind of hurts you liking Jackie's
Chunni
character,
Babu.
because it's a bit more layered maybe than the rest of it, because everything else is so much in our face. What did you
I,
think,
I
Sal?
I
Of
see no layers in Chunni Babu.
yeah, yeah. Sal, you were nodding about Govinda maybe pulling it off a bit
Oh
better.
yeah, no, I think Govinda can pull anything off. Like he was offered this and Tal at the like I think in the same period, and he said no to both of them. I think he regrets that, and he should.
Yeah.
And he would have been. I think he'd have been better than Anil and Tal as well. I love
Mhm.
Govinda. But I think I like Jackie in this. I think he's great fun. I like the sort of hammy aspect of Chunni Babu. I think when I first watched it, I liked it less. But I think as I got older, I think I got sillier, and I could enjoy how silly the performance is and how. I think Jackie is just also such a fun performer to watch. And then I think like as I got older, I could also see how much of him is in the performance. Like this guy who just is kind of, mast mola and I don't even see him as someone who's like into Madhuri's character, into Chandramukhi in this like very specific way. You know, there's that really moving moment when he's like, I've made music and the arts, my children. So I think that appreciation of Chandramukhi is also very that, right? Like it's very aesthetic and he loves that world. And he also knows that there's something, I don't know. I find his performance very moving in a way because there's something so wistful and sad about it as well. Because he's never, it's always like what do they call it? It's like the sad clown smile on Shuni Babu's face to me. And I think
Mm.
like Jackie brings that musicality to the role. And you see that with Jackie and Madhuri actually, because they really come from a certain time with acting. You know, they went through that Subhash Ghai school and everything. You really see that like dumb in the performances. Like you can give them something really ridiculous to do, and they will be good. And
Mm.
I mean, actors now they won't have it. Like if you watch Kalank, you can really tell that that is the issue. You give them a
Mhm.
ridiculous line, they won't be able to sell it. And with Ash and SRK, it's not that that's a problem, but I think, as Amrita said, there's a little more, I think, wazan, a little more weight to Chandramukhi's character, but there's also to both of their presence. They were more seasoned actors at this point than Shah Rukh and Aishwarya, right? So I think that also makes, whenever they're doing anything sort of throwbacky, because at this time they weren't making movies like Devdas, by the way. This itself was an anomalous movie tonally, right? So they could
Mhm.
sell it in a way that maybe someone who felt a little younger, you know, a little lighter, like Ash or Shah Rukh, couldn't in the same way, where it felt a little more, I don't want to say ridiculous, but I think a little more fluttery, you know, a little more lightweight, in a way that's enjoyable in its own way. I'm not, I mean, we'll probably get to this, but I'm not crazy about at least the first sort of third of Shah Rukh's performance in this. Weirdly enough, I think it gets better as as the film
The
goes
sadder
on.
he gets, the worse he gets, the
The
less.
more the less he becomes, it's almost as if the film were short chronologically. But I think all the other performances to me, like all the other lead performances to me, do work.
Let's.
Chunni, but Chunni for me, this is like a weird thing, but like every time I see him, I actually think of did you guys I know probably Sal has watched Gigi, the Vincent Minnelli film.
Exactly. That's who he is. You know,
He's
he's like a
Maurice Chevalier from Gigi, who's like seen all like he's seen this happen. Like he's a fixture in society, and he has seen sad stories unfold in front of him a million times. So when he sees Dev and he sees Chandramukhi, like he's watching it happen and unfold in front of him, and he's like a spectator.
yeah,
That was the
true.
connection.
Way, like the sort of like he's been hanging around, you know, he's like
Yeah,
I think it's like it's such a trope in literature. You're so right, Amrita. You'd see that kind of character. You see them
yeah,
in like Regency romances all the time. And
right.
also, it's worth pointing out that that character is a lot less sympathetic in the novella. You
Mhm.
know, he
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
is in the novella. He is sort of he has his eyes on Chandramukhi, so
Mm.
he is sort of more of a rival figure to Devdas a little bit in there. Like he's not like all warm and like let me help you with my buddy Dev. Let me say it's not that in the novella at all. Like he's kind of a jerk.
Mm.
Yeah,
Let's talk about Aishwarya a little bit. Obviously, Aishwarya and Sanjay Leela Bhansali have kind of a very. I watch him now with Alia, or I watch him now with Deepika a bit earlier, right? But I feel like the connection Aishwarya and uh, Sanjay Leela Bhansali is very like something that transcends cinema. Like you just feel something about these two, and I think it's maybe just they both have a very meticulous approach to performance or how they bring their art, that sometimes, and this is one of the problems I sometimes have with Aishwarya performances, is that sometimes it can feel so meticulous it feels robotic, to a certain degree, and that's where I then connected with Madhuri, where everything she brings has such warmth to it. And I say this that I mean, I've mentioned Salman a few times already, but I always think of Baahon Ke Darmiyan in Khamoshi, where I find that to be one of the most sensuous songs that Sanjay Leela Bhansali has ever directed, and everybody is clothed in that sequence, because I feel there was this moment where Salman just said, "You have your art nonsense. I'm going to do it my way," and I feel Jackie Shroff and Madhuri also bring that pushback, just because they're very secure in who they are. Not that Madhuri, I feel like whenever I say this, I feel it becomes negative to her Aishwarya, where I don't feel she's not, but she's very much, she is so much in sync. And I feel sometimes Deepika had that moment too, where she's like, she's dancing and her feet are bleeding and stuff like that. All of this is happening and she's just going along with it. And I feel Aishwarya had that too. Like clearly, there's that scene where they're at that river, right? And she has like a matka on her head and something, and she's lifting her leg. And I was like, who does that humanly? How do you even do that, right? But it just, there's something about him and Aishwarya together that you really see in certain filmmaker and actresses that I feel Sanjay Leela now feel he doesn't have with her anymore, because they're not working together, and something has been lost in the making of that art that you cannot get with when he's working with Manisha Koirala, for example. So what do you think of Amrita? I'm going to go to you. What do you think of Aishwarya in Devdas? Because I think she did receive a lot of criticism, right?
Yeah, but actually, I'm going to redirect this to Sal, because I know like Sal has like a lot of opinions about the muse relationship between SLV and Aishwarya.
Yeah, no, I think I I personally love this performance. I can also see how it would be a performance that if you don't like that specific kind of performance would leave you cold. It's a very, very mannered performance. It's a very affected performance. I think you're right, Asim. Like if you put it next to Madhuri's, which is a warmer performance in tone and sort of temperature. Um, it's a very cool toned performance, which Aishwarya's performances generally are. People talk about her being icy and her being removed, right? And that can be a deal breaker for some audience members, right? But for some people, that can be what is compelling about an actress, like that removed, that hauteur. And I think Sanjay Leela Bhansali knew what to do with that. Mani Ratnam is another director who knows what to do with that. And I think that's why that relationship, the sort of creator muse relationship, was so compelling. He responded to that remove, to that, like, oh, this is like a not quite human quality. Took that and he knew what to do with it. I don't think most contemporary filmmakers know what to do with that, first of all, and because we want our stars to be human sized now, and we have for a while now, and secondly, almost no stars give that now anymore. Like I love Alia and Gangubai, and it's the right actress for the right role, and it's a different kind of movie that Bhansali is making there. I I think Deepika's very good in Ram Leela, but even in these movies, these are like resolutely life-sized actresses. They're beautiful, they're movie stars, but you can't sell them as like, these untouchable goddesses. And those are not the stories Bhansali is telling now. And when he does tell them, they don't they don't come across as well. Like a Mastani is not the same as a Paro,
Mm.
because Deepika is not that actress, right? A Padmavat, like a Padmavati in Padmavat, doesn't doesn't quite translate the same way. Like those visuals don't feel quite as charged because they don't feel like they're coming from an entirely different dimension to you. Like you were talking about the running, I think, like in one of the reviews. But the thing is, when you watch that scene, you do feel like that visual is coming from an entirely different realm, right? Like it's purely cinematic grammar. It comes from something that's not
Mm.
quite human, right? Like this has to come from a place, from a mind that's entirely cinematic. You don't feel that way as much when you're watching Bhansali things now, either because he's working from a place of more realism, or because like that, like almost, I don't know, that rapturous place doesn't, you can't reach anymore with the actors he's working with now, right? And also because I think like film versus digital, all of those things, but not worth getting into. But yeah, I think like Aishwarya was that actress for him, who had that quality of like, is this a real person? You know, and Sanjay Leela Bhansali makes films that are like, is this a real place? Is this a real world? So I think that sparking together could make something very uncanny and compelling. That could leave you cold if that sort of thing was not for you. But if you went with it, it would be something magical and singular, something you weren't seeing in cinema at the time.
Just to like, in support of what Sal was saying, um, the I thought it was just really interesting that when you see the introduction scene, where Dave has arrived at their house and you only hear Shah Rukh's voice, and Aishwarya is like running through her house, and it's that beautiful house with the stained glass windows. And it's just extravagant and it just frames her. And then she runs into her bedroom, and there's that fly that's like sort of like sort of buzzing around her, and she does that thing with the
That sheet.
with the sheet, yeah. um and then it she collapses on the bed finally, and then the door opens and Shah Rukh is standing there. And I thought that was such a wonderful example of where SLB's emotional connect was within that scene, because it's firmly centered on Aishwarya, and it's about her physicality and her eyes. Like there are like these shots in there where he's just like tracing her eyes and like the way that she's looking at the world. And then when Shah Rukh comes in, and he's this debonair presence, right? Like, and I understand that a lot of people were talking about his throwback to Dilip Kumar, but I honestly, I can see it, but I don't really think of it as like an homage to Dilip Kumar. I feel like Shah Rukh was doing like some very deliberate things in that scene as well. But anyway, um, I think Aishwarya is the one person that SLB was in love with. Like that is like the one um heroine whom he truly like adored, and you could see that on screen in a way that I don't think he felt before, and I don't think he's felt after. Like I'm sure he feels very strongly about Deepika and Alia and Rani and Manisha. And I think he's always been like very grateful to Manisha for like agreeing to do Khamoshi at the time that she did. But Aishwarya was it for SLB, and I agree with Sal. Like he's never been able to reach that kind of emotional zenith since he stopped working with her.
Tony could have worked with Myra Khan. All of this would have been solved, like. um, I also want to talk quickly also about Paro as a character. I know we talked about the performance, but I want to talk about Paro as a character. Um, because it has so many layers in there, right? Like obviously there's the evolution we're seeing about a girl that is in love with her neighbor boy to becoming this. There's even a dialogue where Devdas says, "Oh, you've grown up so much now. You are as a Meendar, and you care about these things and these things." But there's so many different layers, right? Because it also has that pushback against society and what it requires, like where she goes into battle with her mother-in-law, and brings in Madhuri's character, and then she's not even apologetic about her love towards Devdas, because she basically plays it back and mirrors that my husband is doing the exact same thing with his first wife, right? So there's no difference there. But then she also is constrained by the mores of the time. So she does get married to this man who has three very old children, and she also is then locked into the mansion where she cannot get out of, almost like, like a ghost in a mansion in a way. Like she's locked into that societal role forever and ever. I thought that was such a kind of the biggest arc we see in terms of all of the 3-4 characters. I just wanted to say also with the performance, I said I wasn't, but the comparison, because you mentioned Mani Ratnam, is when you watch Ponniyin Selvan, which I think is Aishwarya's best role ever. Like it's the culmination of everything she's been in Nandini. But it's so funny because in that movie they use her iciness as the main thread, and then when you see the warmth, that really like gets to you. Oh my god, she's actually a person behind this and all of these emotions. Whereas I feel Sanjay Leela Bhansali always takes the opposite track, where this is such a lively, amazing Nandini, actually, again, in Hum Dil Dil Chuke Sanam, and she turns into this cold, distant, icy person later on. And it's just such a interest how both of those directors see and approach those characteristics of Ashwarya's as a person, and how they kind of play with it. But coming back to Paro, I just wanted to add that on. Like the arc that Paro goes through is amazing, where she almost, there's a point where people in the second world don't even recognize who Paro is. They recognize us as Parvati, right? Like Devdas is saying, Paro, I want to meet Paro, and people don't even know who that Paro could have been, because they only see her as somebody who
I
takes
think
on.
there is a line where Kiran Kher's character, she says like, "आज के बाद तुम्हें पारो के नाम से कोई नहीं पहचानेगा." There will not be any other Paro outside of Talshunapur when she leaves her Maika. So,
I think her character is also, and that her narrative, her plot line, is also where you see the most sort of social stuff sort of be activated, like the
mhm,
gender and class and all of that. Like it's very explicitly addressed, right? Because why can't their families be allied as allied? It's like a caste thing, right? Like
mhm.
it's like she's from a tamashe wala
नाचने
pariyar
वाले,
or
yeah.
something, yeah. But that's like specifically, like they don't say it, but it's a caste thing. Like niche kul is the
Mhm,
phrase they use. And then she's like, the way I overcome this indignity that's been inflicted upon my family is that I marry someone richer. I marry someone whose title is like higher than yours. You're like a zamidar, he's a thakur, right? So she understands that calculus once she's knocked down by Devdas's family. And once she goes in there, again, like class and gender and all of those things are the most kind of activated in her plotline, because we sort of see those things touched upon in Chandramukhi's story, but it's actually when Chandramukhi is pulled into Paro's world that those things are sort of
mm.
made clearer as well. In that like big scene, I think honestly, I would say the most iconic scene of the film, right? Like the post Dola Re Dola scene, or maybe it's because I'm just around gay people, so it's that scene that people love the most, and like will put on like on YouTube night, the where Madhuri slaps the guy and all of those things. But it's, I think, like all those things about gender and inequality and the solidarity between the two women and class and all of those things. I think in Paro's storyline we see the most of how like the world interacts with the world of Devdas.
I I want to talk about Shah Rukh a little bit now before we get into songs. I know you mentioned Dola Re Dola, so I want to go to that straight. But I think let's talk a bit about Shah Rukh, because you mentioned earlier, and this is also something that Rahul was saying, how this movie is a dialogue between who Shah Rukh was at that time as a performer and the movies he had done. A little bit of Mohabbatein there, a little bit like all of these echoes that then from Devdas went to, I think Mohabbatein was actually before that, right? But it's a very like, I don't know if I think Madhuri I got immediately. Aishwarya I understand now better. Devdas I still have problems with, because I think also is because it's me being a man, like it speaks to a lot of the masculine threads, right? And it's still, I don't know if it is that point that a lot of white critics were raising, that maybe Shah Rukh is too old for this role, right? Maybe you need somebody slightly younger to be able to show that arrogance, that folly, that kind of, that
Naivety.
into, and he feels like a fully grown man when he arrives from London, right?
Mm.
But I don't know if that's the case, if it is the idea that obviously it's a tragedy, you feel you need to be pitying this character, maybe, which I never really felt. The main problem I have with Devdas, I feel when Dev dies at the end, I don't feel we ever mourn Dev dying. We mourn Shah Rukh the lover dying. The Shah Rukh, the person that has given everything for his love in so many other movies, right? Like his honor, his whatever, his body, right? But with Dave, I still constantly have that problem where I just don't feel bad about the guy dying, because he's really, he's jumping off the cliff himself for something that nobody wants, nobody asks, nobody, and also when the moment that he needed to step up. And I think that's something that I a lot of times have problem with, is that his ego and his cowardness takes over. And I think that's kind of the character that it is. I'm assuming, because I've not
Yeah.
read the novel. Um, but for me, I think, Sujoy, when you were talking about this being one of the top Shah Rukh performances, right? My pushback is that it's not even the best of Devdas. I feel if you want to go in the idea of this is a despicable character, I think Anurag Kashyap did that so much better in Devdi, where you really feel that this is like the ultimate loser, where Shah Rukh has himself said that I can make a loser be appealing
Likeable.
to you.
Yeah.
I can do that. And I think, go ahead, Amrita.
No, because I think like both you and these white reviewers don't understand Bengali men. Like
Uh-huh.
that's basically the issue here.
Yeah, no, explain this to me, because yeah.
No, because you're absolutely right. He is supposed to be a despicable person, and he is supposed to be like like that's what the author intended, right? Like here is a man who has all advantages. He's born into wealth. He gets sent to England to study. You would think that, he has like everything, but he's such a little worm, really. But he's also like, what Shah Rukh brought to that role is basically what you recognized, which is that weight of likability, that weight um, of you being able to connect to him despite him being a worm. If this had been played by somebody who just played it as a worm, then Devdas doesn't work, because that Bengaliness of that character is about him being likable and being like lovable and all of those things, but also just being despicable. And that's like a weird quality about Bengali male characters that um I don't know, like Sujoy stepped out for a second, but I'm sure he can explain. Or Sal, Sal's a Bengali lady, so she's got a lot to say about Bengali men, I'm sure. But the if you can't understand the Bengaliness of Devdas, then Devdas doesn't make any sense as a character, in my opinion.
Sal, explain the Bengaliness of Devdas to me, because I don't know.
I think as a character, Devdas is great, right? And I think the way Shah Rukh plays Devdas is interesting because Dilip Kumar's Devdas to me is one of the greatest male performances in
Mm.
film history. Like that's like the way people in the West talk about, like, I don't know, Olivier and Hamlet or whatever. That's me watching Dilip Kumar and Devdas. I think it's that thing where you're able to externalize thinking. It's like an almost impossible thing to do in a movie where you're like the audience can tell that you're thinking. Dilip
Mm.
Kumar does that in that movie. Um, so, I mean, Shah Rukh has a really, really sort of tall task in front of him. And he was already compared to Dilip Kumar. Like, people already said he kind of, copied Dilip Kumar. Dilip Kumar himself, I think, had said
Mm-hmm.
that, like, I think Saira Banu and Dilip Kumar had said that if they'd had a son, he'd look like Shah Rukh. So there were already those comparisons, right? And I think it was hard to escape them. I think there were things in the movie that were directly from the Bimal Roy Devdas that had nothing to do with the book, you know? Um, so those, I think there's all of that stuff. So I think Shah Rukh's not quite there in terms of his performance. Um, what Shah Rukh does bring to the film again is that Shah Rukh thing of like being a weirdo. Like he's like, Shah Rukh had just stopped being like the murder twink, like what, like 4 years ago, right? Like he was, I guess in this he's like the murder twunk, right? Like he's giving that, right? Like he was still bringing like people like the youth, like the young ones don't know when Shah Rukh was a weirdo. They know
Mm.
like
Yeah.
sort of like daddy Shah Rukh. Like the Shah Rukh's boring. Like Shah Rukh used to be so weird. Like why? Like I remember when like the Dawn trailer came out, they were like, "Why is he playing it so gay?" And I was like, "That's like it's not Devdas, right? That's like the thing about Shah Rukh's Devdas. Like there's no reason for him to be that weird, but like because Shah Rukh's playing him, he is very weird, and like tonally, it takes some time for it to sort of work out. But once that character is going through it, like once he's going through like the emotional equivalent of like Koila Shah Rukh being set on fire, or like Dar Shah Rukh being like beaten to like Bharta by Sunny Deol, that's when it gets good. Like that's when the performance gets good. Like once he's like, like his insides are being destroyed, the film is like that performance really comes together. But once, when he's like having that kind of like more, he's trying to do that more kind of the Babu thing,
Mm.
Shah Rukh's just not Bengali, you
Mm.
know?
Yeah.
Like he's come to a place where he can play pretty convincing like Punjabi, but Shah Rukh generally plays Shah Rukh,
Mm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
like he's from Shah Rukh land. It's like vaguely Delhi, as conceived by Yash Chopra, but Bengali he is not like that.
Why does Dilip Kumar pull it off then? What's because I've never seen the
Has
original.
an entire film in Bengali actually.
Mm.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dilip Kumar and Amitabh Bachchan, those are two actors who could play any ethnicity, like Indian sort of culture ethnicity they wanted. They're like very good with accents. They're very good with like just taking on the body language. But Shah Rukh is not one of those actors. So I think like that Bengaliness doesn't like, he's not like someone who's like practiced the accent or anything. He like bungles the first line that's out of his mouth.
Yeah.
He's
Kemonacho. Like when he says it.
I remember when people were like, "Oh, Alia Stella Howe in Rock Your Rani." I was like, have you not watched Devdas in a while?" But I think like once like the character gets away from that, from trying to balance that like assholeness and charmingness, right? Like I'm a romantic lead, but I also am doing these things that like Bollywood heroes don't do. I'm being a coward. I'm just being a dick to this woman, but not in like a sort of, take my hand and walk out of, my
Mm.
father's house. Not that. I'm like, oh, I don't know, like I'm a jerk in that way, like it's not a thing that like, I don't know if Shah Rukh or I think you'd have to be like an actor, not a star actor in your head to be able to sell that. But like once it shifts into like complete loser, I think Shah Rukh Shah Rukh gets the performance.
I think for me the scene that works for me the most, and I know that I'm imagining you're talking about, for example, the "I object, my lord" on the bridge, or when he's doing his own funeral rites, or when he's actually dying. But for me, is the one where he's at the funeral of his father, where he's playing like he comes in completely drunk, and he's just like, "बहुत अच्छा आदमी थे, बहुत बड़ा इंसान था." And that, I think, is like he does tone it down a little bit, because he's still playing. He did have that tendency to be very like what the haters call hakla Shah Rukh, and he has like he's fighting against that, but in that sequence at the funeral he kind of calms down. Also, he just looks beautiful, I feel, in that sequence. I don't know, with the hair and all that kind of thing. um, that is the only scene that really completely works for me. But it's also just that a lot of the Devdas issues that he has are basically that daddy issues, right? Like, at the end of the day, like the constant background noise of that whip hitting his hand, and that being the big trauma, which I guess in the 1900s, like, that was everybody's life, So it's not even like, everybody was getting beat up by their dad. So why is that such a big trauma that he's carrying with him? Yeah, I think that, because at the end of the day, it becomes about reckoning with how his dad treated him more than any love that he may be feeling. I think Rahul made this good point that in the video, is that, do these people actually even remember why Devdas started drinking? Does Paru even remember that she was ever in love with this person, or is she only an idea, as the idea just being perpetuated? But I think with the funeral sequence, it's very much about the core of what Shah Rukh's version of Devdas is about daddy issues. So I think that scene really is the standout for me. Whereas, like, the scene that I have the most problem with, I never understand, is when he hits Aishwarya's with the locket, right? And thing, it's just something like, I don't know if this is something that's about me not understanding Bengali men, but I just don't understand why. What Like, I have no part of that in me. Like, I can understand ego, I can understand daddy issues, I can understand anger, I can understand destructive love, but to the point that you're hurting the person that you're with permanently, right? But I imagine it's also that it's a permanent connection that he's creating with her, right? Like, forever and ever, that mark, or that sindoor that then becomes her for a moment, is basically marrying her, I guess. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's that, Sanjay Leela Bhansali is kind of a pervert.
So Shah Rukh's a weirdo. Sanjay Leela Bhansali is a pervert. Like, I'm glad we're establishing
No,
all
I
of
mean,
this.
like, this is like, it's good. Like, I think it's like, that's like, that's what makes Devdas, this version of Devdas, interesting, right? Like, otherwise it's like an amusement park, right? I think the thing that makes this Devdas interesting is it's got this weird kind of like sexual darkness to it. Like the thing with like him holding her foot and letting the thorn stay in there for a while before pulling it out is part of the same kind of continuum of behavior as him like hitting her with the necklace and then her being like, the scar you gave me is what makes my face beautiful. Like these two f***ers are weirdos. They're you know like Bhansali, like you really get him as a director when you think of him in the same way as you think of someone like Hitchcock, where you're like, these are these very meticulously made films that the director thinks are about these things, but what makes them interesting are the things that are up about the director doesn't know he's putting in there, but he's putting in there. Like
Yeah.
when he made Marnie and he was like, and the screenwriter was like, we can't keep the rape in there. That's weird. And he's like, well, I'm making the film for the rape. You know, it's like that. He's making the film for the necklace against the head.
Yeah.
That's the part he cares about. He cares about all the weird parts. He cares about like, the characters treating each other badly.
It's
Those
like,
are the parts that
it's
turn him
like
on.
it's like Uncle, your kink is showing.
Like that. He cares about, when Devdas is kind of a dick to these women because it's hard to him.
I
So, Joy, we were
remember.
talking about your back. You had a bit of a disturbance with your recording, but Sal and Amrita was saying that I can't understand Dev because I don't understand Bengali men.
Mhm.
So maybe you might have a better understanding about
No.
that and explain it to me. How do you? Because I said basically the most issues I have is with Dev as a character and the
Yeah.
choices he makes. What do you think about Dev as a character?
I mean, he's in every single form of the text and version, he's always the loser, the incel, the spoiled brat, and he is so self-destructive. And there is only redemption in the form of Shah Rukh Khan playing this, and that's why we like him. Or there is some sort of a likability to Dev just because Shah Rukh, the romance god of cinema, is in the form of Devdas in this movie. Other than that, there is no redemption for Dev, even in his realization of how big of a fuck up he is, or all the fuck ups that he's done in his past. When he comes to that realization, there is no sort of redeeming from the audience or the reader towards Dev because he's so horrible. And I guess it is more apparent when somebody like Abhay Deol is playing it, and there is an intent to show that. But when it's Shah Rukh Khan, I guess from the first frame to the last, he's always going to be, oh, Playboy Shah Rukh, romance god Shah Rukh, and that's why we sort of dissociate the two. But inherently, Dev is a loser, and uh, I get that from the get go, and maybe I can see the cinematicness in it, in the portrayal. That's why I don't necessarily need to understand Dave or relate to him. Uh, that's why I like this movie. It's not a relatable movie for me. It's very uh, staged. It's very cinematic. It's very much going for that 11, and it goes there every single time in the emotions, in the pacing, in the lyricality, the poetism, in every single dialogue. It's so, like, every single scene is a setup for the next scene, or every single scene that comes in the future is set up already in the end. Like the diya that happens in the beginning in Silsila Ye Chahat to the diya that goes, gets extinguished in the end. It's all a single arc. There's a through line that Bhansali has sort of choreographed in this narrative, and it's so apparent, and that's also apparent in the performance. It's very, very artificial, and I'm here for it.
Let's get into the soundtrack because I don't want this to be a 3 hour podcast, but I know with Devdas this might be the case. Uh, Sujoy, man, because you were off for a while. Like,
Mhm.
what kind of like it's? I think for me, this is. I mean, whatever issues I might have with the movie, I have no issues with the soundtrack whatsoever. I would say this is probably the last really great Sanjay Leela Bhansali soundtrack because it wasn't done by Sanjay Leela Bhansali. It was done by Ismail Darbar with a lot of fighting and things like that apparently behind the scenes. Um, so, Joy, like, it's hard to say what is your favorite track because I don't
Yeah.
think that would even make sense as a question. But how has your love for the soundtrack evolved in these past 20-24 years for Devdas?
Hmm.
Like, what are,
I
because,
think the love for Devdas is, for me, like the thing that I associate as the first time I heard Shreya Ghoshal, right? This is that soundtrack for me, and the introduction of her voice as Paro's voice is what goes back for me. And even now, when Kavita Krishnamurti, like Shreya Ghoshal hosts Indian Idol, and Kavita Krishnamurti often comes as a guest judge, and they do the Dola Re, and Kavita on this soundtrack was the voice of um, was the voice of Madhuri in some ways, but also some in Hamesha Tumko Chaha is also her voice, which is a non-playback song. It, yeah, this soundtrack rules, man. It rocks my world every single year, every single time I play this. Um, Perhaps the bit that I don't like as much is More Pia. Probably, I'm not sure how Jaspinder Narula's voice fits into this world. She's so I don't know. It doesn't fit for me as well as Shreya and Kavita and Udit do in this world. Um, Maybe that. But more and more like some of the songs I listen to more of often than not. But sometimes like Hamesha Tumko Chaha starts playing, and then like what a song! What a song! Yeah, this is one of those once in a blue moon soundtracks for me, man.
Amrita, soundtrack?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I still listen to it. Like it's been what, 25 years? And yeah, it's still in heavy rotation. I will say though, like for Morepia, I never think of it as like I never think of it just as audio. It's so like the visuals of that are so integral, and it is possibly the best like Radha Krishan
Hmm.
depiction that I have ever seen on screen, like ever. I will back that up with anything. And the eroticism in it, and I mean, we just had this entire conversation about how they're all like freaks and perverts making this movie. But that particular, like what you were saying, Asim, earlier about like how unnatural it looks, like, she's got like she's balancing and she's got like all these things, but those are like so drawn from like temple sculptures, and they're like so
Paintings.
rooted. Yeah, like it's just very, like, to me it's like very nativist visuals in a way that we barely ever get to see anymore. And it's very much a throwback to like V Shantaram, and to like, like these very like very Hindi cinema, like rooted in Hindi cinema, the way that he's done it. And it's just gorgeous. And I mean, there's still people on Twitter, like not even Indians, who discover that song. And then they're just like, my God, like, how did they make this 25 years ago? Because it's so well lit. And then the choreography, and then the chemistry between the two of them.
And
Like,
everything
it's
is on
just,
set. Like that lake is
yeah,
indoors. The whole
yeah,
Chandramukhi's entire palace is all indoors, and there's like tons and tons of material if you want to check out the making of the movie and how all the pains and tribulations they went through. The sets burned down, and the weight of Madhuri's lehenga and all of that. I have something for Asim, if you might have not have known about Morepia, that there is an uncredited Salman Khan cameo in that song when
yeah.
Aishwarya, has the thorn in her leg, and the hand that takes out that thorn is apparently Salman Khan because he was on set.
You know that trivia is the equivalent of white people's "This is where Viggo Mortensen broke his toe in the Two Towers." You stop the frame, you go like this. Yeah, I know that. I know that. It's just
ये
funny
भाई
because
का हाथ है.
yeah. मैं तो पहचान लेता है. मैं पहचान लेता है. No, but the funny part is a lot of times it gets brought up like in a idea that Salman was so jealous that he didn't want Shah Rukh to do this, and you see the rest of the scenes in that song is like it's not the issue here. It's just there. It's funny. Yes, I did know that trivia. Sal, which is the song that gets you riled up and you kind of do the performance for Devdas? Like,
Um, I don't know. I think Dola Re Dola is one of the most beautifully filmed songs in the history of Hindi, possibly Indian cinema. I think it's what Amrita said, right? It's one of these films that so consciously draws in its music and its visual grammar from Indian cinema, from Hindi cinema, after like an entire decade of or like decades of like pilfering from Hollywood and this and that and all of these things. You know, your V. Shantram. I remember around that time, Bhansali had done an interview documenting his influences, and Raj Kapoor's Ram Teri Ganga Meli, one of V. Shantram's movies. I don't remember if it was Dua Ke Barahat or Navrang. And then there was Megita Katara, and like it was like a bunch of Indian films in a bunch of different languages. And you see that in this, even in the Morepia, the Radha Krishna motif. You see that in the beginning of the film in the titles. You have the murals.
Yeah,
Okay, the
yeah.
same murals are in Paro's, Sasural.
Yeah, I saw that too.
Sujoy had said this earlier. Every single thing echoes and echoes and echoes and echoes, which is, I guess, supposed to reflect the unavoidability of their fates, like the inevitability of these
Hmm.
people's fates. Like, if you fall in love, things suck. And I think the music has that weight too, right? Like, it feels heavy and grand and inevitable. Like, every time I listen to Hamesha Tumko Chaha, I'm like, this is this is big. This feels like that kind
Yeah, the
of world.
soundstage is enormous in that song. Like
Yeah,
the way it starts, and also like for a Hindi soundtrack, all of a sudden in 2002 to have a Thumri by Pandit Birju Maharaj, and to showcase Pandit Birju Maharaj's Kathak style, and to make Madhuri dance to it, it's insane, insane.
Lenka,
Yeah.
it was just like those all like the lore, right? But also, yeah, the music itself. Dola Re Dola, like I don't think again, I think a lot of the songs are not audio only
Hmm.
experiences. Weirdly, the song that is, other than Hamisha Tumko Chaha, the most audio exclusive experience that works for me is not in the film really, except for an excerpt. It's Wo Chaan Jaisi Ladki.
Mm.
I love that song. I think it's so beautiful. I think it's one of Udit's most beautiful vocals. Um, and then I also like the little music piece in the beginning, but they don't have that on the soundtrack. I think it's so pretty.
It's also just crazy, like how far the influence of the songs goes, right? Like to now, like I was thinking of Mardala and Polite Society,
Hmm.
where they kind of do a retake of it, and it's probably one of the standout moments of, or even like Dola Re Dola. I think Rocky or Rani Spivani, I think you guys even discussed it because I wasn't on, like that sequence of dance that
Hmm.
happens between Ranveer and, I mean, those connections. Kalank you mentioned too, right? Like I think it, like the influence of all of these songs of these, the movie goes so far. We've talked about Can too, right? Like if there was no Devdas, there would not be Can for Indian cinema this way. It's, I don't know. Are there any other things that you notice that you say, "Oh, this is a direct line from Devdas? This is kind of an influence."
I mean, I think Devdas is like Indian cinema to a lot of like diaspora, like
Mm,
millennials. It's like they get like their idea of like what that kind of very celebratory Indian looking Indian cinema is. Like Dola Re Dola is the song everyone knows. It's that music video everyone puts on, Mardala. Like I think because the film also looks so recognizably Indian,
Hmm.
like
Mhm.
it's because it's a period film, etc. And then it's so vibrant in those archetypally Indian ways. I think it's become kind of a mascot Indian film. And then, of course, because it's so beautiful, like not just beautiful in a way that like is, I think, accessible to us, but like beautiful in that like this is a Wong Kar-wai film or whatever. Like you
mm,
show it to your like foreign films friends, and you're like, look at how beautiful our cinema is. Like I think Devdas is kind of that film. So I think Devdas has become kind of that like totemic film in a way of Indian cinema for the 21st century. Um, More so than like films I think that were more respectable at the time. I don't know, Lagan, for instance.
mm,
I feel like Devdas endures more,
mm,
but
Yeah, it
just
yeah, I feel like Devdas definitely had more of a cultural influence than something more respectable like Lagan. Like Lagan to me is a cultural dead end. Like there's nothing like I can think of that was like, okay, so this is like like an homage to Lagan, or like it sort of like propagated something. But I remember in the wake of Devdas, the Indian TV industry was just like wall to wall Bengali melodramas.
Oh,
Like it
absolutely.
was
Kasauti
all over
Zindagi
the
ki
place.
exists because of Devdas. Yeah.
they did Anurag's death as
Hmm.
Uh,
like the as Devdas's ending. They recreated it with the music and everything. And what's her face? Prerna runs through the streets of Calcutta. Everywhere.
You can trust Ekta Kapoor to pull that shit, right?
Uh, I feel like Ekta Kapoor just mined the hell out of that. Like I remember there was this one show of Ekta Kapoor that I really liked. It was called Bandini, and at one point it's about this old man that not old man is Ronit Roy, so it's how old can he be? But like a middle-aged man who marries like a teenager. And it was there's a portrait of his dead wife, and I was like, wait, that's Vijayendra Gadge's dead wife from
The
Devdas.
same wife, they
Like
share a wife.
she, like she just like stole that painting and put it up in her set, and she was just like, there you go. That's the wife that he can't
By
get.
chance, they're doing like Konkanas in a serial that looks like one of the
Yeah.
fake serials.
Yeah.
Also, we got to call out I Hate Love Stories, right? Which was very much kind of like taking down
Mhm.
SLV, which I feel is one of the best parodies in Bollywood cinema because it just like, it has that Dewey Cox walk hard feeling where it's like, it encapsulates so well what it must have been
It's
like
in
working
the
with Sanjay.
Bahara song, right? It's
Yeah,
within the
Yeah.
Bahara song.
yeah. But even like, it's
Characters
Neelam's,
Bhansali, the Sameer Soni character in
yeah,
general, I think, is
yeah,
which is also funny because like it's Sonam's boyfriend
Sonam.
at the time doing it with like the Bhansali heroine.
Yeah.
It's not kind of like that.
Any other random notes that we didn't talk about? Anything, Sujoy, you have any things that you wanted to kind of pick up on Devdas that we didn't discuss?
Like every
You were
time Chunni Babu says "Good morning, Bondhu," I die a little. Everything about Devdas is so pretty that even the mitti when Chandramukhi gives to Paro is done so aesthetically that the mitti looks like Bornvita to me. Um, what else? Yeah, Vijendra Ghatke came out of nowhere. The last time I saw him was in a Ramsey movie. Uh, these are all random thoughts that I had during watching Devdas, really.
Hmm. My only one that I again is Madhuri related, obviously, is like, every time she comes on screen, I'm like, oh my God, first of all. And then it's like, again, it's like Dola Re Dola and stuff like that. It's like, she's standing to the prettiest woman in the world. At that time, Aishwarya was crowned as
Mhm.
the prettiest woman, the most beautiful woman we agree upon on the world. And Madhuri is still like Madhuri, man. It's like, yeah,
Oh,
I love
and the
her, man.
last bit is all the Bengali isms that this movie tries to bring into the dialogue is so much hard work for Kiran Kher, for Shah Rukh, and even for Aishwarya Rai. And I cringe a little still, even after all these years. I know that they are going to come, but they surprise me still.
Shutti.
Uh, the verse is when Kiran Kher says "More gelam," which means I've died, and yes, I did. Yeah.
Cool. I guess that's it for Devdas. I think, yeah, we covered pretty much everything I
Can
wanted to
I
cover. Yeah.
can I say like one last thing? The scene, the thing that I cannot forgive Manzali for is that scene where um Chandramukhi and Devdas are together and at her kotha right before everything finally just goes right? And she's got her hair in the fountain, which is like such a like a pakiza, yeah. And she's like she's lying there, and he is lying there next to her, and then he finally says that maybe you can touch me, and it is such a like a sexy scene, but also it is such a beautiful scene, and it is such an Indian cinema scene. Like I love that scene. Like for that one scene, like I can forgive Devdas for a lot of things.
I think Tiku Talsania.
Yeah, I know.
God bless them.
I know.
Dharam Das,
Curses.
bringing the dharam.
Also,
Curses.
Milind Gunaji got cock blocked a lot in this one.
Yeah.
Like every
Yeah.
left and
People did
right.
not talk about this at the time. Milind Gunaji was kind of giving daddy in that movie.
He
Yeah.
was a thing, right? For
Yeah.
a moment, Aanke Jhuki
What?
Jhuki and all that.
Yeah.
He had
I
a moment.
I remember people calling him the hotter version of Nana Patekar.
Ah,
Oh.
makes sense. Makes
I
sense. I
think
mean,
that's for him.
yeah. So I mean, no, it's not hard to be a hotter version than a particular.
Yeah.
Anyway, Sal, where can people find you online?
So not on Twitter as much anymore, but Sal and the Bad Pun, if I remember correctly, on Twitter, and the Salamander Chicago on Instagram.
Are you still writing, Sal?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great.
We're trying to.
Is that findable somewhere online, or you just very?
Yeah, I usually post about it on Twitter or Instagram when I do put something out, and I'm actually working on something that is Bengali this year, like on a Tagore-related stage project. So
Oh, wow.
hopefully we'll be putting that out there soon.
Amazing, amazing. Sujoy, where can people find you online?
I'm available on all my socials at 9E3K. You can follow Khandan Podcast on all our socials at Khandan Podcast, and do check us out on YouTube as well at Khandan Podcast for all our video content.
Amrita?
I'm still locked out of my Twitter account, and I'm in no rush whatsoever to get back on. So, the best place to find me would be on Patreon at patreon.com/Khandan Podcast. I do these little video vlogs. I talk to people. I debate things. It's a good place to hang out. And also, if you are in the Chicago area, you should keep an eye out on Sal's Instagram, because she does like these amazing artistic things, and I am constantly angry that I am not there to be a part of it. And I really wish I could be there, but maybe in better times one day.
You can drop us an email at youpodcasting@gmail.com. I think this is going to be episode 299 of Khandan Podcast. So we are reaching a milestone of 300 crazy ass episodes. Let us know if you want anything to discuss, any thoughts you have, if you hate us, if you love us. What has the journey been with you for 300 episodes of our nonsense, which is insane. So yeah, we've probably taken an episode where we kind of, just think about those things and talk about it. So would welcome your thoughts. And yeah, that's it for this episode. Thank you for listening.
Khandan podcast on the acting class.